Good evening. A warm welcome to the speakers and to all our colleagues and friends, both in person and online, for attending this last public event before the summer, and actually before the field season 2024 starts at the Institute, launched by the Neolithic excavation at Gurimadi, southern Euboea, co-directed by Dr. Zafiriadis, followed by the Small Cycladic Islands project, focusing on Santorini this year, and by the end of the summer, the Apidima excavation, which is what we came to listen to tonight. So on behalf of the University of Bergen and all of us at the NEA, thank you for joining. Dr. Zafiriadis will introduce the speakers and the topic of tonight's lecture. Thank you so much.
So good evening, everyone, and welcome to our lecture. We are honored to have with us Professor Katerina Harvati and Associate Professor Vangelis Tourloukis, two eminent scholars in paleoanthropology and prehistoric archaeology and directors of the Apidima Archaeological and Geological Research Project conducted under the auspices of our institute. In tonight's lecture, the project directors will discuss the findings from the 2023 Apidima field season. They will present new evidence from the Apidima cave complex in Mani, shedding light on this fascinating site, which is crucial among other topics for researching the coexistence of Homo sapiens and Neanderthal species in this region. Although both Katerina and Vangelis need no introduction, allow me to give you a brief highlight of their impressive academic background and achievements. Dr. Harvati is a professor of paleoanthropology at the Institute of Archaeological Sciences and the director of the Senckenberg Center for Human Evolution and Paleoenvironment at the University of Tübingen. She is also professor at the Center for Early Sapiens Behaviour at the University of Bergen. Her research focuses on Pleistocene human evolution with an emphasis on Neanderthal paleobiology, modern human origins and dispersals, and the paleoanthropology of Southeast Europe. Her broader interests include primate evolution, the settlement of the Americas, and understanding the evolutionary processes underlying human skeletal variation. She is also the recipient of 3 ERC grants and has been conducting an extensive research programs in Greece. Currently, she directs the 5-year research project at the Apidima Cave Complex in Mani with Dr. Tourloukis, funded through her ERC Advanced Grant First Steps. Professor Harvati has also co-directed fieldwork in Europe and Africa since 2006. Dr. Tourloukis is an associate professor of prehistoric archaeology at the University of Ioannina and a senior researcher in paleoanthropology at the Institute of Archaeological Sciences at the University of Tübingen. She has extensive training in prehistoric archaeology, focusing on the Paleolithic period, lithic technologies, and geoarchaeology. Dr. Tourloukis has co-directed and participated in over 25 archaeological surveys and excavations in Greece and Turkey. In his research, he investigates the evolutionary dynamics between early human technology, subsistence strategies, and environmental settings. His interests include the evolution of the human niche, the role and social dimensions of prehistoric technology in early human behavior, and the socioeconomic and ecological context of hominin behavioral diversity. He has been awarded research grants from the German Research Foundation, the Volkswagen Foundation, the Werner Gren Foundation, and the State Scholarship Foundation of Greece. Additionally, he has been involved in numerous ERC-funded projects. So now, if I try to give in detail the publication records of our tonight's speakers, we might have to cancel the lecture because it will take a lot of time. So I would ask you to, if you have any questions about bibliography, bibliographical issues and publications, please ask the two speakers during the reception following the lecture. So without any further delay, let us all give a warm welcome to our speakers tonight, and we will start with Dr. Tourloukis, right?
So, Kalispera, good evening. Thank you all for coming here tonight. It is a pleasure to be here, and we would also like to thank the organizers of this lecture, the Norwegian Institute of Athens, which also hosts and supports our project in Mani. Also, great thank you to the people who are watching this lecture through the Zoom. So we'll discuss the results from the 2023 field season at the Apidima site. Actually, these are the first results from the excavations at Apidima, and I would like to stress to start stressing this, that the 2022 field season, which was our first year at the site, was kind of was about preparation and organizational issues. We had to make sure that we have access to the site, and we had to make sure that there is a safe environment for people to work there. So it was in 2023 that we started excavating the site, and we took samples and all the things that we will be discussing here today. And the as you probably know, every time we archaeologists and paleoanthropologists open excavation units, we try to answer questions, but in fact, we open up new questions. And so today it will be about mostly about questions and how we frame these questions and how we try to formulate testable assumptions, hypotheses that we can test on the empirical record. And these questions and the broader framework that surrounds those questions has been on our minds for many years. It's not something new, and the choice of Apidima, it's not random. It has been, we have been working on these issues with Katerina for a lot of long time now, and not just us, but within a broader framework of a team that has been working together since, I don't know how many years, more than 20 years now. Actually, a team that was, how can I say, crystallized or galvanized in Mani with the excavation at the cave of Laconis. I'm trying to say that this is not, the results that we will show you today are also the result of or part of a long-term research program that we started in 2012, when Katerina was awarded the first ERC grant, the starting grant. And we did the first survey in Mani, actually. And all this research would not have been realized without the financial support of 3 ERC grants that Katerina has managed to secure, and that's a world record in a row. So without further delay, I will just now. Well, I'm trying to. Already.
Now.
Okay, so we will start with a little bit of framing the work that we do with this broader picture, these broader questions, and then we will go very briefly to the history of previous research at the site, because the site has been excavated in the past by another team in the 70s and the 80s. And Katerina will also summarize, hopefully fast, the results from her recent laboratory studies with her colleagues. They published a seminal paper in the journal Nature in 2019, and with very important results. But what is even more important are the implications of those results, and they're very much related to what we do in Apidima and why we are there, and how we also plan and design our next steps. And we will finish with the goals and the results of the 2023 field season. So Neanderthals and modern humans in Mani. Neanderthals and modern humans, it's why we're there and why we excavate Apidima, because there has been a lot of discussion about these two species, whether, about their coexistence, about competition between the two, and what is going on. Neanderthals are, in evolutionary terms, our sister species, our closest relatives, together with the Denisovans. And they appeared in Eurasia around 300,000. They thrived in Europe, Eurasia, in diverse landscapes. until about 40,000 more or less. And they are associated with the so-called Mousterian culture, the Middle Paleolithic of Europe, whereas Homo sapiens appears in Africa around 300,000 and is associated with the Middle Stone Age, again with a technology that is to a high degree similar to the Mousterian. So it also involves the Levallois technique, for example, which is also the technique that Neanderthals were using in Eurasia. And at some point, around 45,000 or even a bit earlier, they appear in Europe and in most parts of Eurasia. So the major questions about this, the story about these two species have to do with three. Well, I think there are three main questions, or we can summarize it like this: for how long and where did the two species overlap? This is an open question. Up to now, I don't know, a couple of years, we thought the consensus was that they overlapped for at least a few thousand years in Europe. But there are some predictions that they might have met before that in other places. So this is an open question, and this is one of the questions that our research, well, it's one of the broader questions that we try to address. And the other question is, to what extent did they meet and influence each other in cultural terms? Because, for example, we know that they were both using the Levallois technique, a way of knapping stone tools, a very specific way of knapping stone tools. And it is a question whether this technique was transferred by one species to the other, or whether they invented it independently in what would have been the equivalent of convergent evolution, as they say in paleoanthropology. So to what extent did they meet? How did they see each other in cultural terms? And how, to what extent did they influence each other? There is this term acculturation that, you know, there was for a long time assumed to have been from the Homo sapiens to the Neanderthals. It's a long discussion. I won't get into that. And of course, the eternal question in paleoanthropology: did the modern humans drive Neanderthals to extinction? This is a common assumption in ecology when two species share same habitats and they use the same resources. It is reasonable to you know, sometimes for one species to push, let's say, the other species to marginal environments, or even drive it to extinction in what is called competitive exclusion, I think it's the term. So these are the broader questions that surround our research in Greece in general for that time period, the Middle and the Upper Paleolithic, and in Mani and Apidima in particular. These questions have to do with dispersals of modern humans out of Africa, from the so-called cradle of humankind, from their place of origin to the rest of the world. And this is a complex pattern of multiple events, as we have come to realize the last decades. So modern humans that you can see here, this is the range here in Africa, and with the red arrows you can see the routes of dispersals to Europe and to the rest of Eurasia, to the rest of the globe actually, besides the North America. I don't know about this. But this is the time that modern humans appear in Europe, around in this time block from 60 to 30,000. And this is the time that we know that they have overlapped with Neanderthals for sure, and that they probably there was admixture between the two species, genetic admixture. And these stars show the places where researchers assume that has been this admixture took place here, the Levant and the northern Balkans. And this is a very hotly debated subject, but this time block is even more complicated and difficult to address. The earliest dispersals, from about 180,000 years to 60,000 years before present, when the early Homo sapiens from Africa leave Africa, we find them here in the Levant again, and Katerina will tell you more about this story. But I just wanted to make sure that you keep in mind these two themes, that the research that we do is relevant to these late dispersals, but also, and more importantly, perhaps, to this story here with the early dispersals of modern humans out of Africa. So, and how is the Paleolithic of the Mani Peninsula related to this story? Well, the Mani is one of the regions with the highest concentrations of Paleolithic and sites and paleoanthropological sites in Greece. It has yielded important sites that have been excavated. For example, and most importantly, the cave of Lakonis and the cave of Kalamakia, which have provided Middle Paleolithic sequences. They date from about 100,000 to 40,000 before present. Kalamakia has provided the richest sample of Neanderthal fossils in Greece, and Lakonis also a long Middle Paleolithic sequence, but very importantly, a Neanderthal tooth associated with an initial Upper Paleolithic technology, so the so-called transitional technologies between the Middle and the Upper Paleolithic. This is important also because in the rest of the Upper Paleolithic sites in Greece, with few exceptions like Klissura, Kolominica, and Kefalari, all known Upper Paleolithic sites were either first occupied in the late Upper Paleolithic, so we don't have the evidence of the appearance of modern humans, these late dispersals that I was talking, or there are hiatuses, there are gaps, stratigraphic gaps between the Middle Paleolithic and the Upper Paleolithic layers. This is a map from showing the sites that we discovered in 2012 with our survey in Mani. This is the area that we surveyed. And this is the site. This is the Mani Peninsula. These are the Itilo sites next to. This is the Itilo Bay, and here's Kalamakia, and this is Apidima. So the sites, Mani is very rich in Paleolithic sites, and most of them are. This is Apidima. Most of the sites are caves, and in fact, coastal caves. A lot of geomorphological features, in Mani are related to the change of sea level. So to the sea level high stands and sea level low stands. So the sea makes these marine terraces and makes also these wave cut platforms, creates or helps to create caves. And a lot of sites are next to the sea shore or to the coast, or directly at the sea level. To unravel this geomorphological evolution of the region and of Apidima, it's a complicated task because besides the sea level oscillations, the changes of the sea level stands, we have to take into account the tectonic processes. So what happens also in terms of uplift and subsidence. It's not very straightforward. The Apidima, the site of Apidima is located, as I showed you, between the in the other map, between the Itilo Bay and the Bay of the Iros, at this rocky and steep coast to the west of the town of Areopolis. It is a karstic cave complex, which includes 5 caves that have formed directly on the cliff face of the limestone bedrock, and they probably follow local diaclasis cracks that allow the infiltration of water and the opening of the cavities. Here you see this is caves D and E, and here's cave A, B, and C. So they probably follow this limestone diaclasis cracks. And this is where Katerina takes over with telling us a little bit about the history of research before we went back.
Before us.
Before us.
Okay, so hi everyone. Hi also from myself. And before I start, I want to also thank Vangelis and the whole team at the Norwegian Institute of Athens, as well as the University of Bergen. It's a great pleasure to be here and see so many friends and collaborators, including our colleagues from the American School and the Ministry of Culture, the University of Athens, etc. So very briefly, and we have spoken about this also last year, but the team of, the site of Apidima was investigated between 1978 and 1985 by a team from the University of Athens Medical School Museum of Anthropology, led by Professor Theodore Pitzios. And they conducted investigations in most of these caves, I think at least these 4, and had some really incredible findings, actually. So very briefly, I'm going to tell you, oops, did I go the wrong way? I'm going to tell you what they found, and I'm going to concentrate on the finds from Cave A. Perhaps we can very quickly show you again the caves. So the most important findings come from Cave A, which is this smaller one on the left side, and Cave C, this one right here. It's even smaller, actually. There are findings also from Cave B and Cave D, but the most important ones come from these 2 caves so far until now. So this is from, I believe this picture is from 1978 or 79, when this block of breccia from the ceiling of Cave A was removed because it was found to actually contain 2 human fossil crania. So up, you see here, Cave A, I remind you, deep here in the ceiling, you can see very well, right? There's a ladder, and this person is setting up in preparation of removal of the block. And while they were, in fact, they knew that there was 1 skull, and while they were removing it, the block, they realized there's also a second skull right next to it. You can see this block of breccia when it was taken out, and you can see the outline of the first skull, skull 1, and the second one a little bit up here. And again, this shows you the approximate position of where this breccia was found in the ceiling of Cave A. These skulls were, oh, I'm sorry, I keep going the wrong way, I'm sorry. There they are. Apidima 2, the second one, is actually more complete. Apidima 1 was already eroded away, part of it were fallen away and washed away by the sea before they were removed. And they were, for a very long time, assumed to represent pre-Neanderthals. We said already that Neanderthals are known from the region, and even though they were already known to be among the most important paleoanthropological findings from Greece, if not the most important ones, they were not really, it was not possible to really study them in great detail. They're, as you can see, they're fragmented and kind of distorted, but also it was very difficult to date them. So there was not really a good way to have a proper date. So assumed to come from the Middle Pleistocene broadly, and also to represent Neanderthals or pre-Neanderthals. And that's the status quo before our research started. But I also want to bring up Cave C, which you can see here. It's really small and very narrow. Some of you here have been excavating there, so it's not the easiest place. But Apidima C, actually, cave Rama, relates to this later phase, the Upper Paleolithic, the early Upper Paleolithic that Vangelis was mentioning earlier, because they were found a lithic assemblage that was originally described as potentially Aurignacian, so early Upper Paleolithic. And this is very rare in Greece, among a few sites that are known. But not only this, also a skeleton of what seems to be a young adult woman that seemed to be associated perhaps with the Aurignacian, but also together with pierced shells interpreted as personal ornaments and considered, proposed by Professor Pitzius and the team to be as old as 35,000 years old, without actually having a date. But if this is correct, and if this human burial actually is associated with the Aurignacian, it is one of the very few in all Eurasia, not only Greece, of course, also in Greece, there's no other such finding. So tremendously important as well. And our recent, we attempted a recent redating of the skeleton as well, which gave the minimum age of terminal Pleistocene. So at least it is Paleolithic. We don't know exactly how old. This is something that we are still investigating and hopefully could also answer from our new excavations. Back in 2000, I think 17 or 18, I was invited by the team of the University of Athens Medical School to collaborate with them in conducting a sort of a new analysis of the Apidima remains. And what we did is we conducted CT scanning and virtual reconstruction of these human skulls, detailed description and metric analysis, comparative 3D shape analysis, and importantly also, we conducted a direct dating of uranium series analysis on fragments from both specimens, as well as the matrix actually. So I don't want to go into too much in these results. Probably I talked about them also last year. I don't know if all of you were here last year, but the results were, some of them were exactly as we expected, but others were highly surprising. So for Apidima 2, remember this is the most complete of the two crania. This we found to be, as expected, to show a lot of Neanderthal characteristics or Neanderthal-like features, dimensions which align it with Neanderthals in its cranial morphology, and also when we conducted a shape analysis, I mean, okay, I can very briefly, these are principal components plots of 3D coordinates representing facial morphology and overall neurocranial or brain case morphology. So if you have here modern humans and Neanderthals, and these are in yellow pre-Neanderthals and early or pre-modern humans, let's say from Africa, you have Apidima 2 clustering very clearly with the Neanderthals in both of these analyses. So nothing really surprising there. This is just as it should be. It fits with the picture we have from Europe from this time period, and also with what people thought about this these remains before. But when it comes to Apidima 1, we had actually quite a few surprises. So this individual, unlike Apidima 2, did not have any Neanderthal features, although you should expect, perhaps you remember Apidima 1 only preserves the back of the skull. Maybe you say, well, it's really broken and it's such a small piece, what do you expect to find? But it turns out we're quite lucky because the back of the skull not only has or should show a lot of Neanderthal features that are located in this anatomical region, but is also extremely typical for modern humans. So they differ very much in this part of the skull. So we are very lucky that this part is preserved. So Apidima 1 not only doesn't show any of the Neanderthal features, but it also shows some of the modern human features that you shouldn't expect it to show. And you can see this as well in the shape analysis. Now, this is similar to what I showed you before for Apidima 2, but in this case, you can see that Apidima 1 is clustering with the modern humans in our plots. And even in this plot here, where there's a bit more overlap on this side with Neanderthals and modern humans, Apidima 1 is with the modern humans and it's falling away from Neanderthals. If it's close to anything, it's the pre-modern human from Africa. So this was a very big surprise. So always classified as modern humans, always close to modern humans in total shape and so on and so forth. But we also had a second surprise when we conducted our uranium series dating. We had, of course, we always assumed, like everybody else, I told you already that the skulls were found very close to each other in this breccia block. And always everyone thought, including ourselves, that they must be of the same age. This is somehow what you would normally think. And this was, we should not have thought that perhaps. Perhaps we should have been more careful because the breccia sediments are known to be just mixed things that are falling together and getting mixed together, yes? So when we dated the matrix, we got a date of approximately 150,000 years ago, which actually means this is the time that the sediment became rock, became breccia. So you cannot actually put anything else inside after this point in time. So in a way, it gives you a minimum age for these two skulls. We also dated some unidentified bone fragments from exactly the same place where the human skulls were found. And we found they had two clusters in age, one approximately 160,000 and one older than 200,000. And then now the human remains, the Apidima 2 skull gave a date which was very similar to this one cluster, around 170,000 years ago. So far, so good. Everything is normal. But then Apidima 1 actually had a much older date as the most likely date from this analysis, older than 200,000 years ago, somehow clustering with this other cluster from the unidentified bones. Okay, what does this all mean? Well, Apidima 2 belongs to the Neanderthal lineage. It fits expectation of Neanderthal evolution like we know them from the rest of Eurasia. Apidima 1 does not. In fact, it possesses a combination of sort of primitive but also modern human features, always plots and classifies as Homo sapiens, always closest in overall shape to modern human individuals. And what we interpret, of course, is that this must be two different populations living in what is now southern Greece in the Middle Pleistocene. An early one, early Homo sapiens coming first, or at least in Apidima from our findings, around 210,000 years ago, followed by a Neanderthal group circa 170,000 years ago. And of course, I already mentioned Apidima 3 is of Pleistocene age and further dating is required. Apidima 3 being the Upper Paleolithic skeleton. Okay, so what does this all mean? So we have the situation that Vangelis mentioned before. We have early modern humans around, the earliest ones appearing around 300,000 years ago in Africa, but we know them from other early contexts of South Africa, East Africa, and so on. And at this time, we have Neanderthals living in Eurasia, starting at 300,000 and disappearing shortly after 40,000 years ago, right? But as Vangelis already mentioned, we have a complicated picture in the Levant where we have early modern humans appearing, the earliest ones at 180,000 years ago, and also around between 130 and 100,000 years ago. But after this, we have Neanderthals arriving. So, oops, I'm sorry. This is the wrong place. So we have Neanderthals showing up and replacing these, or apparently replacing these early modern humans until they themselves are replaced by the sort of last great expansion of modern humans around 60,000 years ago from Africa. So you have a kind of back and forth, right? You have first modern humans, then they get replaced by Neanderthals, and then they get replaced again by modern humans. So we know that we have dispersal of early Homo sapiens into this region, into the Levant, as early as 180,000 years ago, which is considered somehow failed. Why is it failed? Because Neanderthals replaced them. They did not stay there forever, right? And this might have something to do with environmental shifts. I mean, this makes sense, right? You have perhaps migrations of people following climatic conditions and moving around on the landscape. And what is additionally very interesting is there is recent paleogenetic evidence for mixing between Neanderthals and some ancestors of modern humans that dates before 200,000. So we know that there are modern humans meeting Neanderthals before 200,000 somewhere. Is it in the Near East? Well, of course, it is considered for a long time that the Levant is a possible contact zone between Neanderthals and modern humans. But I would argue that we also have to consider not only so Israel and the Levant, but also perhaps the whole Eastern Mediterranean as a potential contact zone. We have in Apidima a very similar situation, what we see with the Levant. We have an early population of modern humans, early modern humans being replaced by Neanderthals, and then later early modern humans of the Upper Paleolithic coming in later on to replace them. Okay, so what are the implications of all of this? So of course, the study from 2019 actually suggested that there is an early dispersal of Homo sapiens out of Africa, which is even earlier than we knew until then. But more importantly, that it reached much further than previously thought, that it reached all the way to Southeast Europe. 150,000 years earlier than the earliest Upper Paleolithic Homo sapiens in this region, yes? So quite a long time before. And this fits very well with this early Homo sapiens from the Levant, but also with this genetic evidence for this ancient interbreeding event before 200,000 years. And it fits expectation of frequent population movements in this contact zone, high diversity and so on. And again, as I mentioned before, the whole Eastern Mediterranean might be considered a contact zone between Neanderthals and modern humans. Which brings me now to this project that Vangelis already mentioned. So this is the current ERC grant that we are working on, which basically grew out of this research on the Apidima remains. So by working on this and finding all these unexpected results and opening so many new questions, it became kind of our preoccupations. What else have we missed? And must we now re-examine the whole evidence and try to see what is going on in this early period of Homo sapiens dispersal also until the Upper Paleolithic. So this is a grant that is in collaboration with the University of Bologna in Italy, and also now with the University of Ioannina, and as well as, of course, with various colleagues, as I mentioned also earlier, the American School, the Ministry of Culture, the University of Athens, the University of Thessaloniki, and so on. And you can see here all the team members, finally, everyone is hired, including all the PhD students and postdocs. And part of this, what we are working in this project, is the re-excavation of the Apidima site, as well as additional fieldwork in Italy and in the Northern Balkans. But this is for another lecture. So this is the last thing I want to say before I give over again to Vangelis. So just to tell you what the main goals now of the new Apidima research project is directly related to what came before. So we are aiming to assess and readdress all the research questions that came up from this work with archaeological methodology that is based on the most up-to-date and interdisciplinary field approaches, and of course, analysis of finds, and to extend this research with elucidating new research questions arising from our recent laboratory studies and the dating of the existing paleoanthropological material. So site formation, taxonomy of humans, can we find additional human remains? How do we explain these two skulls are found very close to each other? Can we say something really about this Apidima Rama early origination? Is it really what was suggested by Pitzius and so on? And with this, I give to Vangelis to tell you the exciting results from last year's season.
And I will continue with some nice pictures just to make you feel more comfortable. Again, so this is a photograph taken by drone, and it's an aerial view, vertical view from above, looking down to the side of Apidima. And I just want to say that with this, that it's a very difficult site to excavate, and mainly because, well, first of all, we cannot go down there from the land above, from here. It's impossible to descend, to go down, to climb down. So we have to go by boat. And the problem with the boat are these reefs next to the coastline. So it's really difficult to get there, and that's why. And you have to take this into account because there are days, it can be weeks that we cannot access the sites. So when we say we do a field season there, it's not like 6 weeks excavating. It can be very few days excavating just because of these practical issues. So these are the reefs, and that would be the easy way of getting there. This is cave A, cave B, and C, side view. But unfortunately, there is no access from that side. So we have to go from here. And as I said, it's not always easy because the sea is not as calm as you see here in this photograph. There are days that the waves are so high that we cannot, when the captain says we cannot go, we don't go. It's as simple as that. So the goals and the main results of the 2023 field season. Well, we had to complete the topographic documentation of the site, which means all 5 caves and the surroundings. We did that by use of total station, or actually 2 total stations, 3D laser scanner, photogrammetry, and the use of a drone. We started more seriously, let's say more detailed, the geoarchaeological and geomorphological study, which is conducted mainly by Dr. Karkanas, our geologist and my former supervisor in my PhD. We had to remove this the back dirt from the old excavations and to expose the old trenches from the previous team that excavated the site, which was not a straightforward issue there, because you cannot just throw rocks around. It's super dangerous. And we opened new test trenches. Finally, we could open new excavation units for the first time after the 70s and 80s, when the Pitios team left the site. And equally important was the sampling that we did. We did an extensive sampling for dating purposes, but also for geoarchaeological, geological, geochemical, and all sorts of analysis. And this is the topographic documentation with a total station. We managed to construct a single excavation grid where all the recorded points can be placed in the same coordinate system. And this allows us to have a direct comparison of all recorded points, regardless of topographic location, inside, outside caves, cave A, cave B. It's all in one system. But this has the disadvantage that because the caves are, some caves are on top of each other, then in plan view, they overlap, like you see here. And this is an example of the grid in cave A. But we have a single coordinate system, georeference system, and we can put anything inside, outside the caves in a georeferenced system. We also used the drone to map the entire area of the site and the surroundings, and the drone took a series of aerial photos, which are not only very beautiful, but also of high resolution. And because these photos are taken, they're sequential and they overlap, we can use them to collect geospatial data. And these data are then used to construct digital elevation models and do all sorts of crazy stuff that the geologists do with the new techniques. We also used for the documentation of the site, we used a portable 3D laser scanner, and we scanned the caves to construct a georeferenced 3D model for each cave. The laser scanner documents a cloud of 3D points of the surface of the cave, and then the clouds of points are being processed in the lab and to create these 3-dimensional models, which are placed inside the georeferenced grid system of the site. The only problem is that the processing of the site takes a lot of time, and it's a long yeah, there's a lot of work to be done, and it also requires high power computers. So this is still ongoing. One of the most difficult things is to evaluate the stratigraphy of the site, and that's why we're very thankful to have Takis on board, who is actually doing this. Because the stratigraphy of the site involves these talus cones or conglomerates, if you like, the breccias, what we call. And the whole question is to understand when how to divide these breccias in different phases, in different units, and to understand the relation to the sea level, low stands and high stands. Because when the sea level rises during an interglacial, it erodes these breccias, and also to infer the processes involved in the deposition of the sediments, we have to imagine a totally different topography. We have to reconstruct somehow a totally different topography. You need a relief for all these things to fall, to cover the cliff face. And so this this is really one of the most important things that we need to do, and one of the most difficult, I would say, stories in the whole Apidima research. So in cave A, we removed a sample of the breccia from the location of the skull of the skull breccia, of the place where Pitius and his team found the two skulls. We targeted the same place here on the ceiling of the cave A. We constructed a scaffold, and two sculptors from Nafplio, two really good sculptors, they managed to take out in a very nice way one piece a block of breccia that we documented it with a total station before we took it out and after, and so now we can clean it and conserve it in the lab as if we would excavate it on site. So if we have any finds from there, we can place them in the grid system of the site. And these are, with the orange, it's the clay, it's the sediment, the gray, it's the limestone, and the beige thingies right there are bones. So that would be interesting to see what comes out from this block of breccia. Also in cave A, we did a lot of cleaning, and that takes time, I can tell you. Nick can tell you also. It takes lots of time to remove all these big boulders but we had to do it. And in fact, yes, when we cleaned the cave, this is the place where we took the sample of the breccia, the block. And this is an old trench from the Pitius excavations that we managed to uncover when we removed all this the debris. Also, we located lithics on the surface when we cleaned it, carefully. We also located or could trace the limits of an archaeological deposit that occurs on the floor of the cave and abuts to the wall, the eastern wall. I don't remember which side, but it's on the floor and the side of the cave. And and after doing this cleaning, we also recovered and excavated stratified lithics from the cave. Like this one made on black flint. Not all of the artifacts are diagnostic. We just scratched the surface of cave A. We haven't done a proper excavation unit. But some of them look Middle Paleolithic. In Cave B, we opened a new excavation unit, and we logged and studied the stratigraphy as it is exposed in a natural profile next to the unit. This is the unit that we excavated, this one here, with a hammer and a chisel. It's highly compacted. So, and so far we don't have any lithics from Cave B. We only have fragments of bones or this fragmented this part of a mandible. But it is important to see what is going on with Cave A, because the floor of Cave A, the sediments on the floor of Cave A, Cave B should be related to the sediments of the ceiling of Cave A, where the crania, where the skulls were found. This is an assumption that we are testing, and we will find out. And next year, this coming field season, we will focus on this darker horizon here, which might be hopefully due to organic rich sediments. Maybe it is anthropogenic, it contains anthropogenic remains to be seen. So we have some fauna remains from Cave B, okay, Katerina and whatever, it doesn't matter. Cave C, we started the excavation of 10 quads. So we opened 6 one by one units, and focused on 10 quads at the central and northern part of the cave. The squares in the center and towards the entrance of the cave here yielded finds already from the original layer 1, the uppermost layer, which was, however, partially and locally biodisturbed in the upper part. But the excavation of the central squares showed that the surface of layer 1 is the surface where the excavations of Professor Pitius stopped. And all the finds below this original uppermost layer are embedded in undisturbed, geologically sealed Pleistocene sediments, and provided a wealth of cultural remains, lithic artifacts, fauna remains, charcoal and shell fragments that I will show you in a while. So the density of the finds varies among the excavation units, but important finds were collected from all the layers below the uppermost. In fact, we have distinct fine concentrations, such as the one that you see here, with charcoal fragments, and we have other charcoal fragments, bones, and lithics. We have other concentrations with lithic scatters, and in fact, pieces that conjoin, refit. All these indicate episodes of anthropogenic activities and on-site lithic napping. So as crazy as it may sound, the humans that were there, they were doing napping inside this small and narrow cave. And also these concentrations confirm the picture of an undisturbed and sealed archaeological context, which is further supported by fauna remains like those vertebrae from a single deer individual, like this vertebra, and this is a mollusk. Okay. From Cave C. Our protocol for detailed documentation of the excavation includes also the piece plotting, of course, the piece plotting of all the finds, the recording of strike and depot finds, and selected gravels, and the application of photogrammetry, which is done by David, who's here with us. We try to document everything, even the stones that we find. we excavated about more than 550 lithics from Cave C, and more than 60% of those are flakes, chips, and byproducts of the knapping of stone tools, which further supports this view that they were doing knapping on the site, in the cave, on site knapping, and that there has not been any disturbance whatsoever. The main raw materials are radiolite, quartz, and flint. We identify two main reduction strategies: bipolar on anvil, and you can see here a bipolar quartz core, and we also found the anvil itself with percussion traits. And the other reduction sequence is the volumetric reduction with direct percussion. We have cortical. So some of the cores are very exhausted, so we cannot identify the initial shape of the blocks of the cobbles, but we have some like pieces like this, a cortical cobble opening flake that indicates the use of pebbles as raw materials. We have technical blades with bladelet scars that inform us on a focus on the production of blades and bladelets. In terms of formal tools, we have end scrapers, side scrapers, bladelets like this one, a backed bladelet. So there was a focus on the production of blades and bladelets. All these indicate two main things. First of all, that we have almost the entire reduction sequence, the so-called chaîne opératoire, from the beginning, you know, with cortical flakes to the end, formal tools. Cores, technical pieces when they want to change the angle of the core or whatever. Debitars, flakes, blades, and formal tools, and many chips. And secondly, we have an industry that matches very well the Upper Paleolithic industries. This is further confirmed by other evidence, like this blade, a technical blade with blade scars, a side scraper on a blade, and a carinated, very beautiful carinated core. All these are really, I don't know, pieces that indicate an industry that should be attributed to the Upper Paleolithic, to the origination. This is very important because there are very few sites with this kind of Upper Paleolithic sites from excavated contexts in Greece and the wider southeastern Mediterranean region. In Cave C, the fauna remains refer mainly to deer and bovids. There is a high degree of fragmentation. The sediment crusts on the bones make it difficult to study them, but we have enough evidence for with burn bones. So there was a lot of there was some burning, and together with a high degree of fragmentation, we can infer anthropogenic activities at the site. Besides the mammals, the food refuse, the main dishes, there's evidence of mollusks, and some of those marine species can be interpreted as food refuse. But others, like these snails, this Tritia, and the Olumbella with perforations, are possibly pierced shells, such as the ones found by Professor Piccius and his team in the first phase of investigations in the same cave. So this could be interpreted as ornaments, and this is also this also highlights the importance of the caves. Cave E, we did not open excavation units, but we did find, when we were logging the stratigraphy and went there to sample collect samples for dating, we found lithics. And this is the first evidence of human presence in cave E based on in situ stratified lithics. The lithics, they have a middle Paleolithic morphology, but we still need to clean them from the sediment and study them properly, right? As I said, the sampling that we did was, in my mind, one of the most important things we did, because we took lots of samples for dating, and this includes samples, sediment samples that will be dated with the optical stimulated luminescence dating technique. We have burnt lithics from cave C that we want to date with thermoluminescence. There are teeth and mandibles that we will do animal teeth that we want to do ESR and uranium series on bones. And of course, there are fortunately lots of charcoal fragments that we want to send for C14 dating. We took also lots of samples for geoarchaeological studies, XRD, total organic content, all this. Micromorphology, of course, for Takis. Takis did most of all the sampling, actually, like you see him here, trying to take out a piece of speleothem that we can date. You see the speleothems, for example, they are in some places capping the archaeological sediments, the sequence, so they can give us terminus antebem. Okay, yes. Thank you. We took also bulk samples or sediment samples for phytolith analysis that will be conducted by Georgia Tsartsidou, who's also here. Charcoal and archaeobotanical studies are being also Georgia, together with Professor Maria Dinu from University of Thessaloniki, are in charge of the studies, and will be studying all these macro and micro archaeobotanical remains. And we also took samples for sediment ancient DNA analysis. This is Maria Dinu at work in the yard of the hotel, where she's doing so-called wash over technique. This is also included in our excavation protocol flotation. We will start this year with flotation of all the excavated sediments, not the brecciated sediments. These cannot be, you cannot wash those, but ones from cave C, they can be washed, and that's what we are doing. And we are recovering amazing finds from the flotation, like these nice little bladelets, besides the archaeobotanical and the zooarchaeological material. So, to summarize, last year we did an extensive topographic documentation by use of total station, drone, photogrammetry, and the 3D laser scanner. We also did an extensive sampling for dating, geoarchaeological, and archaeobotanical studies. In cave A, we sampled the breccia block, and we exposed the old trenches, located anthropogenic deposits and artifacts. In cave B, we opened the new excavation units, and we also exposed in cave B. We exposed the old trenches, and we located the target layer for this year. In cave E, we have the first evidence of anthropogenic material, and in cave C, we opened 6 excavation units. We located the limit of the old excavation. We evaluated the stratigraphy. We have unearthed archaeological material that is embedded in sealed deposits with evidence of on-site, undisturbed human activities. So to come back to the questions from the beginning of the lecture, well, the evidence from cave C indicates that we are dealing with early Upper Paleolithic cultural remains, and these are related to the dispersal of anatomically modern humans in Europe, the later dispersals that we were talking about when I showed you the map. The evidence from Cave A and Cave E, we have very likely Middle Paleolithic artifacts, but of unknown age as of yet. And this would relate to Neanderthals, we would think, a few years ago, but maybe also early Homo sapiens. That it remains to be seen. And in Cave B, we don't have any lithics yet, but we have deposits that are likely related to the skull breccia of Cave A and might give us really important evidence this year when we go back and excavate Cave B. I didn't mention that, but we obviously you probably realized that we didn't do anything in Cave D yet. That's one cave that we haven't touched yet due to logistical reasons. We cannot excavate all 5 caves simultaneously. So, and with that, would like to thank you all for your attention. We are grateful to all the team members, all the museum curators and collaborators, and of course the Norwegian Institute, the University of Bergen, University of Tübingen, University of Ioannina, University of Athens, the Greek Ministry of Culture, and the Winner Lab and the American School of Classical Studies. Thank you very much.
Vangelis and Katerina for this fascinating lecture on your work and Apidima. So can continue with questions of the audience. Who wants to start first?
Firstly, thank you both for this really exciting project. It's really interesting and breathtaking, and we're expecting all these results. I cannot even imagine when you find things would possibly bridge of the two of the species, the feeling and the excitement. I'm not a Paleolithic expert, so my question might be out of context, but I was wondering, based on what you said, that this is just part of your broad project, and you're also aiming at other regions like I think Italy, first question I was thinking, okay, so you have this bridge of the two species today, mostly based in Levante area. Is there a kind of pattern, spatially or geographically, only in landscape terms, that you can identify this kind of merging of the two species, or it's totally random? And the other question is, how did you pick up your sampling area?
So maybe I can start.
Yeah.
So it's the hypothesis of where the two species might have met. I mean, you can start from a kind of biogeographic perspective and start thinking, how would you expect different kind of animals or mammals to move around the environment or the landscape, and where you would expect that populations might come into contact. So for the Balkans in general and Greece in particular, we have had this hypothesis for a very long time that this is a place, not only us, also others, that this is a place that has a kind of dual role. It's a dispersal corridor. So we know this also from more recent times, where people just come through this region to go different places, to go from the Near East into Europe, from Europe to the Near East, from Africa through the Near East or to Asia. And so it's kind of a crossroads, very central position, yes. But it's also one of the Mediterranean peninsula of Europe, which means that the climate never goes extremely bad. So even during the ice ages, you can still survive here. So what you expect from this situation is a very complex scenario. I like to call it a Paleolithic melting or Pleistocene melting pot. Why? Because you have populations retreating during glacial times, retreating to this nice area where they can survive. And maybe you can have species that were older surviving that went extinct in other places in Northern Europe, for example, or Central Europe during these times that actually survived in these southern regions. And you always have also newcomers coming from multiple places, right? Migrating through here. So it's an ideal place, our region, somehow both very central and also very long, let's say, like a refuge with populations surviving very long time. An ideal place for populations to meet and come into contact and have cultural or genetic exchange and so on. So, and this is actually one of the main hypotheses we're trying to test, not only with Apidima, but also other work that we're doing at other sites in Greece, for example. Can we actually show this? Was this the case? Because we don't really have, until recently, we don't have a lot of work going on in the Paleolithic of Greece, so we don't really know very much, actually. In many cases, it's just a blank map for the Paleolithic of Europe, where you see this very central region where there's not really much there, not because there's nothing going on. I really strongly believe that that's not the case. But the research compared to, let's say, France or Germany or Belgium, for example, is very limited in historical time. Now, so perhaps we can.
And the geneticists have also make very relevant predictions.
This is
about-
true, but also the geneticists, they have problems with this region as well, because the preservation tends to be very bad when it comes to genetics or collagen and all these analysis. Even C14 is very difficult in our region. I don't know why, we have both blessings and not so good things. But this is the idea behind why we think. But also, of course, now with the research that we're doing, and especially with the Apidima crania, the analysis of the crania, this was a totally unexpected result. I have to tell you very openly, but it really completely fits with this hypothesis somehow. And also, as Vangelis says, it fits also with other people's work like this. New evidence from paleogenetics that there was really an ancient medium content, an ancient interbreeding event. I mean, I don't necessarily say or think that it happened at Apidima, but perhaps we're seeing this broader situation. Yeah? So, but the sampling, I think, do you mean the sampling from the site or in general?
I mean, the sampling of the sites you are going.
Where to go to
yeah.
excavate?
I mean, is there like a part and like you said, is there somewhere close to the sea or no?
Do you want to answer this?
No, it doesn't really doesn't have to do with this kind of landscape features. It has to do more with the sites themselves and the finds of the sites. So, for example, we are targeting certain assemblages that we try to. Well, this is another lecture, but there are certain criteria that we have used to try to track down the dispersal of modern humans. This is a major question. How can you do that? You know, what is the proxy that you are? So yeah, but so for example, in Italy we're checking the Uluzian and so-called transitional industry.
But in general, when you're trying to find sites, you try to target sediments of the time period where that you're interested in, and this is it's very helpful to have geologists on board, for example. But also you can go on where sites already exist or finds already exist that have interesting finds. For some of the excavations, what we are conducting, like Apidima, are from sites that were excavated many decades ago and have yielded, in some cases, very enigmatic findings that were not very easy to interpret. And now we're going back and conducting new excavations with new dating methods, with cutting edge approaches, both in the field and analysis of finds, and looking with new eyes now, having this new evidence and this new hypothesis in mind. I said before, it's kind of funny, but what else did we miss? I think it's very easy to, when you have a kind of very strong idea how things should be, things that don't fit exactly, you kind of don't really take into account. And this is exactly what we're trying to look at. The things that don't fit exactly with this previous idea, this previous model that people didn't really think about or didn't study very much or didn't talk about very much because it didn't fit. Now we want to know about them really. What do they show us, and can we maybe fits with a different model that we are now trying to test, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah.
There is, you've already implemented some effort for the plans of environmental, geological extraction, like how was the setting in the middle Paleolithic, this cave? Was it still 5 caves, 5 separate caves, or something different?
Like Vangelis said, this is one of the most difficult questions, and we have Takis working intensively on this.
Thank God we have
Yes.
time working on this.
Because, I mean, of course, it's very relevant also for the skulls, right? Because how did they get there on the ceiling of the cave? What does it mean? How was it all connected? And
The caves were there. Yes, they were always there. The question is
What we see was totally different. I mean, all these caves were formed later in the history of the geological system there, and they didn't exist, let's say. I mean, they were caves, but the shape of their distribution was totally different. This is a continuous cave shaft-like system that was blocked and filled gradually from the bottom, of course, to the top by the collapse of the cliffs, and filled the interior. At the same time, of course, people were there, and all this gradually filled and blocked the caves, and now we have a reopening of the caves.
because the sea level, yeah, so it's very.
Sea level rise. So I'm
Highly,
working on this,
Yeah.
I'm not going to say more.
highly dynamic and difficult to follow process. I think this is the key point to take from this, and but if Takis cannot figure it out, nobody can. So,
Okay. So, thanks.
no pressure, no pressure.
We have taken so many samples for dating, and actually we have promising results, which makes me feel more confident that at the end we will solve the problem.
But it's crazy to think that where the sea is right now would have been a plain with another totally different relief that would allow the sediments to deposit, to flow down, and it's crazy.
So, thank you very much for the presentation. How deep the sea was in the mid-Paleolithic times after Spain? How many meters lower?
How much lower?
Lower.
How much lower would it have been, the sea level?
130 meters, but 130 meters, but actually doesn't mean that this was the depth of the sea.
Yes,
At that particular point. We have to take into account the relief,
yes.
the substrate of the sea at this particular area. I believe that it was not far. I mean, the sea probably, okay, the coast probably was a few hundred meters to about 1 kilometer away, not much. But still there was a piece of land in front of that for sure.
A little plain.
Yeah, again, a smooth plain. Exactly, the same in the same way that we have this small land in Italy, for example, today.
Question?
Thank you for a very nice presentation. I sadly missed the first like 45 minutes. Sorry, I got rejected by 3 taxis. I don't know what's happening today. What could have talked about?
Yeah,
There
take it
is.
personally. Yeah,
Yes.
so-
Yes.
Anyway, I have a question about the 3D documentation. I'm a student at the University of Oslo, master student, and I've done a little bit of GIS and had some classes about the documentation. Also, that's just kind of in my brain. And you talked a lot about how you use those like post excavation and also like sharing with other people, like making the models available. So I was just wondering how you guys use the models and the stuff.
We haven't even constructed the models yet.
You mean from the sites, right? Yeah,
Because I have a lot of info to
it's
We-
an
we-
ongoing.
We are still processing the data, and it takes forever because there's just lots of data, lots of clouds of points that take a lot of power, high power computers they need, and so we don't have anything yet, but that would be something to consider to upload them somewhere in a repository. I don't know if
I think, I mean, eventually, right
eventually,
now,
yes, but
you have to
we-
consider also that it's a very complex project and a lot of work going on. So it's, right now it's a 5-year project, but it will take, I think, longer. So some years longer. I don't want to say how many, but to finish all the analysis and all the work, I don't think it will be enough time, this 5 years, right? Maybe 5 years of excavation, and then you have to imagine that the analysis of the finds will take some years more. So perhaps at the end of that, I mean, that would be a great idea. Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I really like caves. I think they're very fascinating, but like in Norway, we don't have a lot of caves. So for any of us, if we want to study them or use them for any sort of project, they're completely not available. So if we could have access to some sort of 3D models of caves, that could be like a really nice starting point.
Virtual caving.
Yeah.
Why not? Sounds good.
Great, that's a great idea, actually.
Any other questions? Could we have any questions from?
We have not been looking.
We can take over.
So we have another question. See. The question about the preservation of the lithics in terms of patination levels, as well as edge damage that might hamper any user interpretation. And another question regarding the perforated cells, if you have observed microscopically and specific patterns regarding the production or shape of these perforations.
Well, the last part is ongoing. This is something
Yes.
that is planned, but is not yet happened. So
Yeah,
that's the answer for the last
Um,
question.
Yes, the study of the possible pierced cells is ongoing, and we have some hints, but we cannot really right now go into detail about this. The question about the lithics, yes, the lithics are not patinated from cave C for sure. No, also from cave A and E. None of the lithics. There is no patination in lithics. Edge damage, we haven't even cleaned them yet. I mean, we haven't checked. We haven't reached that far to check them under the microscope and look for edge damage and the potential for user studies. But we do have that in the plans. User will be conducted user organic residue analysis. Yes, that's yes. I don't know if we covered that.
Right. Any other questions? Right. Do you have a question? Was that a hand or not?
Yeah.
All right.
I'm also for that. And also integrated with more into optimized. Is that something you expect to find there, or?
It would be fantastic. But we haven't, I don't think we have.
No, we don't have anything yet. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, maybe I'm not. I don't know about raising like what
At least in your problem.
yeah. So we don't have any.
All right. And with it, then, I guess we should thank you for the lecture.
Thank you.